Good morning, everyone, and welcome to ProcureX conference. It's nice to see you all. I'm Agnieszka Gajli. I'm Category Manager for Corporate Financial Services at YPO. I'm managing a wider range of contract portfolio within the corporate category with specialists on the insurance procurement. For those of you who are new to my organization, YPO is a public sector buying organization owned by 13 local authorities from Yorkshire and Humberside region. We have a national remit and we are working and supporting our public sector customers across whole UK and across all sectors, you know, even if you are a local authority, housing association, blue light, NHS, or you come from educational sector. So today's session is about risk management, and I will be using examples of the things I have learned from the procurement of insurance. So what's the purpose of risk management? The purpose of risk management is to prevent issues and provide loss mitigation if risk events occur. It is fair to say that supply chain risk management to some extent was a helpful addition to the pre-procurement stage. We all did it. But now when we face a worldwide crisis, it is not a helpful addition anymore. It is a must-have and an essential step in any decision-making process, not only procurement, in absolutely every decision-making process and on every level. And just as an example, when you're looking at risk, you're looking at it from a strategic perspective. So your organization is looking at the whole risk which was brought by COVID-19 outbreak and the ability of the organization to continue with the service provision. They will look at the organization will look at the risk from financial position. And if you look at the statistics we received from BBC, in 3 months in the lockdown, BBC reported that about 150 local authorities had forecast a combined budget shortfall of at least £3.2 billion. And some of the largest councils were warning that they might have to declare them effectively bankrupt unless the government agrees to further support them. So that's for your financial risk and financial position of the organization and what organization I'm looking at. From the operational perspective, when we look at risk, we look how we maximize resources, all types of resources, our facilities, people, the equipment we've got, so we continue meeting the aims and objectives of the organization and keep providing services to the public. And as well, from the compliance point of view, from the compliance perspective, this part is very, very difficult and very tricky because it relates to compliance with law and government advice, which is constantly changing. You know, we now stopped with having daily briefings from the government, but the advice is still constantly changing, and we are in that position when we're looking at the recovery phase and how to ease the lockdown. And all organizations, not only public sector organization, it doesn't affect on the local authorities or if you're a blue light, but our supply chains as well. We're looking at how to accommodate those changes and actually keep going and providing the services. And what we see now is that for the first time ever, everything is risk focused. Ability to manage and mitigate risk is now identified as a key challenge. And I've just recently read latest research on procurement skills and key trends in procurement, and it was undertaken by HISE, the recruitment agency, in collaboration with SIPS. And what it says is that risk mitigation is now a key skill, not only for public sector, but across all the sectors. And in the private sector is listed actually as a top skill. What's really interesting in the research I've read is that it was published pre-COVID outbreak. So that risk mitigation, risk management skill was already a key challenge and key focus, even in the pre-COVID world, pre-COVID environment. So if you look at it, we might ask ourselves, why is it important now to master the skill of mitigating and managing the risk? And it is important from because of various reasons. For example, before COVID-19, we were in a post-Carillion world. In the world of the collapse of a construction giant Carillion. And when it went to liquidation, it went into liquidation with debts of 1.5 billion. And at the time, that company had about 420 UK public sector contracts. And the collapse of the company brought a massive disruption to the ongoing projects and to our supply chains. And it did affected a wide range of organizations, and it affected the strategic infrastructure projects. So that's one thing. Another example is that we are in the post-Grenfell Tower world as well. And it might seem like it was a few months ago when we were dealing with that catastrophic event. But in the published report today is actually setting out a number of ways in which building failures contributed to the spread of the fire that actually killed 72 people back in June 2017. And following from this disaster, the government changed building regulations and banned the use of combustible materials in the external wall of high-rise residential buildings. And that had another impact on how we actually verifying our supply chains, how we sourcing our products, how we checking quality of the products we're buying. And now let's look at the situation we are now. We are in a COVID-19 environment. I am not going to say post-COVID-19 environment, although majority of the sectors has now moved on to recovery phase. The risk of getting another lockdown or the risk of getting regional lockdowns is still very high, and it's still going to affect our supply chains, our suppliers, and our organizations. And not to even mention that we will be dealing with a shrinking economy, which will have impact on people's lives and how we work and how we live moving forward. And what is interesting to see in this whole outbreak situation is that what's coming next that will affect our supply chains and our operations, and why that risk management and risk mitigation strategies are really key and important before we actually move into recovery or start new projects. So what we see at the moment when we're speaking with our customers, when we're engaging with local authorities, with government departments, is that we are at the edge of transformational changes to the ways we work and live. The projects that we were planned to do or look at doing in a due course or 2 years' time, 5 years' time, will be starting right now. And the focus for public sector organization will be on how they deliver better public service, stronger society, and more dynamic economy. So we will be looking at projects starting relating to carbon targets, health-related infrastructure, general changes to all type of infrastructure, transport, energy, communication, flood defenses. This is all happening, and it's actually exciting to see, and it will be exciting to see how different regions from UK, with support from the government, will actually embrace that challenge and transform the way they provide services and the way we actually live and work. And what's coming next as well is that on the 1st of January 2021, we will be in a post-Brexit world, which will add another layer of supply chain disruption. And in not so distant future, we will be dealing with the climate changes and the weather. And what we're hearing from the insurance industry and from the other parts of the world, from the other countries and different conferences, is that weather-related catastrophic events will impact our supply chains in a similar way that this pandemic is impacting us now. And the way we source products, materials we use, and it will impact the way we source products, materials, and it will provide disruption to the projects. And there's a lot of material, really good examples of how the globalization of the supply chains is changing because of the pandemic, because of this pandemic. And with the globalization of supply chains, the globalization of supply chains has led to different parts of the world specializing in production of few key products, materials, food, and we all benefited from it for a very long time. And that interconnected world, now when we deal with the COVID-19 disruption, show us how big a risk it is. It does show us that there might not be capacity in other parts of the world to plug the gap in supply chains when another disruption happens, and that we are vulnerable unless we learn from the lessons, unless we learn from the past and the current situation, and start looking at building resilience, not only organization resilience, but our supply chain resilience. So now let's have a look at risk management when it comes to our procurement projects and supply chains. I will be using example from the insurance market. And why example from the insurance? Firstly, because I'm very passionate about this. With the solutions we have established for our public sector market, we know we can add value because we do have quite extensive knowledge about that sector and how it reacts to market changes. And we know we can make a difference. And being involved in insurance procurement has made me appreciate the risk management more. And insurance is very different to other types of services we buy in, because what you're literally buying is a promise to help you when you need it. And you'll be buying a promise to pay for the claims, which you not know that they will come and when they will come. And that promise to help is only as good as your terms and conditions of the insurance policy, and as good as the outcome of the insurance procurement tender exercise. Insurance contracts are contracts of a good faith, and you will only know the value of that promise and negotiated terms and conditions when something bad happens. And we have many lessons learned. So I did mention to you post-Grenfell Tower world, but there is many other examples, like plane crash on the highway, children abuse cases. There will be more cases related to COVID-19. We're just not in a position yet to tell how they're going to look like and how the insurance market will respond to it. So what's important to know when you're buying insurance is that you need to sell yourself to an insurance company. Market is limited. Not many insurers are interested in covering public sector risk. And that's very much different to a standard procurement you're doing for a different type of services. When you're buying insurance, you really need to think this through and focus on that preparation stage and risk mitigation and actually identifying supply chain risk to understand what are your chances to get the best outcome from that insurance procurement. And the power sits with the supplier, and you need to do a lot of work up front to get their interest. And what's important to know as well, that insurance market is fast changing and you have a little control over this. It's affected by the internal and external factors, something you might not even have think about when analyzing risk at the pre-procurement stage. And literally what happens in one part of the world with a knock-on effect in every other country and as well in the UK. So what I have learned from procuring insurance And this is something that one of the insurers explained to me in a very short sentence when, like we're having discussion on how the insurance market, insurers make decision before responding to your procurement tenders and providing you with a quote and terms and conditions, is that your claims, he said exactly this to me, that your claims profile, the accident that occurred, the claims you had, and the number of claims you're dealing with and how serious they are is your past. And risk management, your risk profile is your future. The procurement of insurance requires different approach to standard procurement undertaken in the public sector. The most common approach when you're trying to achieve cost savings, most of procurement activities are centered around cost savings, which means obtaining suppliers at the lowest cost possible, provided that they fall within specified quality requirements. And literally, to give yourself a chance to get good outcomes from your insurance procurement process, you need to really focus on that preparation stage, and that includes risk analysis and risk mitigation from the perspective of financial assessment above the standard norm, above the Experian reports and that we tend to include in our selection questionnaires. We need to look at risk analysis from the market assessment, from the supply chain assessment. We need to fit it with the strategic objectives of the organization and their future plans. And to do it all, we actually need to have effective stakeholder engagement, both internal and external. And from that sentence, from that one sentence I've learned from one of the insurers, claims is your past, risk management is your future. You actually related to the current situation and how you're currently looking at the supply chains and risk mitigation strategies. Because if you think about this, the supply chain disruptions you're facing now and how you're dealing with them, that's your past. That is your past. And the risk management and the risk mitigation, which will be part of the strategy building of your organization objectives, what projects start to first, that's going to be your future, together with that focus on building resilience. The risk mitigation in the procurement of insurance will be focused to ensure you achieve a good terms and conditions at the best price available currently in the market, and to achieve competitive response for a large number of insurers. And the only way you can do it is by analyzing your supply chain and understanding its dynamics. And this and the same scenario applies to every procurement, whatever it is that you're sourcing. And one way to actually mitigate and analyzing risk is to use a structural assessment of the supply chains. And that structural assessment of supply chains can help you prioritize high risk areas that offer the greatest opportunity for creating supply chain resilience. And there will be organizations, there are suppliers that heed the lesson of this crisis and make investment right now in mapping their supply chains, so they do not have to operate blind when the next crisis strikes, so they can quickly figure it out, the solution, when the disruption occurs. And there's another benefit of the supply chain risk analysis and supplier mapping. While you're going through your supply chain, tier by tier, you actually have opportunity to discover social value benefits, really key topic at the moment for all our public sector customers. You do have a chance to identify environmental risk, look at that modern slavery, identify opportunities to bring on board tier 2, tier 3 really smaller regional SMEs who can actually help you to get the economy starting, get the regional economy growing. And sometimes in the procurement of insurance, the risk is so high that it actually requires you to do that supply chain risk analysis, supplier mapping, and actually start look at different approach of procurement, where a number of insurers actually join together to cover one type of risk. So as a procurement professionals, we have a key role to play as your service departments, commissioners, leaders will be actually reaching out to you to get advice and get answers. So what you need to do is to be at the front of the game, knowing exactly what's going on with your supply chains and how to achieve best outcomes and how to mitigate risks. And people from procurement, service departments, supply chains, logistics, wherever you are, everyone needs to come together to talk about the key gaps, the tools, the information, the people, processes, resources, and look at the gaps. We need to review the gaps to see what you can do to protect the organization from disruptive events in the future, and to try to find a way to still align the goals of procurement with the overall business objectives. So when disaster strikes, everyone suffers, buyers, suppliers alike. Therefore, it only makes sense that we incorporate risk mitigation and disruption-related metrics in our analysis, preparation to procurement, and even in the evaluation of suppliers. There is a clear business case for companies to reduce supply chain risks, such as issues of cost, speed of delivery, responsiveness, quality of the service, quality of the products, and actually strengthen the supply chain performance by building resilience of operations and communities along supply chains. In the current climate of uncertainty, we know that critical to achieving cost-effective and strategically sound procurement outcomes, it is critical that we are preempting challenges. We are securing buy-in from our stakeholders, and we are creating sound business case for change, and we actually source products, services, works from the right suppliers. So finally, what is important to remember is that risk management, risk mitigation is an ongoing process, and we are currently in a fast-changing environment. The status of the risk we identified at the beginning of this pandemic might have changed now, and new risks emerged. And simple example, just following from my conversation with one of the insurers yesterday, was that if you look at the workforce safety at the beginning of the pandemic, the key thing was to protect as many people as possible and stop the spread of the coronavirus, and to ensure the continuity of the service. But now, after 5 months in, and 5 months of people working from home and trying best to avoid contact with other people, we have a new emerging risks, which is being highlighted to our leaders, and that is around the workforce well-being and mental health risk caused by isolation, lack of social interaction, stress, and fatigue. So risk management should be ongoing on the strategic level, operational level, compliance, financial, and actually ongoing when we're reviewing our supply chains. It is a dynamic process. And during severe events, such as this current pandemic, it is worth revising your risk analysis to ensure that your response and your actions are appropriate. So on that note, I would like to thank you for your time. I hope you find this session useful, and I would like to invite you to visit YPO's stand and speak to our category specialists from construction, energy, ICT, fleet sector. You will be able to talk to my colleagues around the around the current trends in the market, how suppliers are responding to this pandemic, and get idea of the future trends in recruitment and insurance as well. So thank you and have a great day.